How many times have you felt like you were the only one putting in effort? Like no matter how much you text, call, or try to connect, he keeps pulling away? You're left wondering what went wrong, replaying conversations, searching for signs that maybe, just maybe, he'll reach out first this time. But instead, all you get is silence. And that silence feels unbearable. I want you to hear me on this. It's not about you not being good enough. It's not about you needing to prove your worth to him. The truth is, the more you chase, the more he runs. The more you try to pull him closer, the further he distances himself. And if you don't know how to handle this, you'll find yourself stuck in a cycle of anxiety, constantly waiting, hoping, and feeling powerless. But what if I told you that you don't have to play that game? That instead of chasing him, you could shift the entire dynamic without manipulation, without mind games, simply by focusing on yourself in a way that makes him feel your absence in a way he can't ignore? That's exactly what I'm going to teach you today. If you do what I'm about to tell you, you'll be amazed at how quickly an avoidant man will feel the pull to contact you, not because you begged, not because you convinced him, but because he wants to. So let's get into it. Most people don't realize that the very act of chasing pushes what they want further away. It's human nature to want to hold on to something that feels like it's slipping through your fingers. But when it comes to relationships, especially with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, the harder you try to pull them closer, the more they retreat. And the worst part, you don't even see it happening in real time. It feels like the right thing to do. You think that if you just express how much you care, if you just show them you're willing to be there no matter what, eventually they'll see your value and stop running. But that's not how this works. The reality is chasing comes from a place of fear. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear that if you don't do something, you'll lose your chance. But that energy is repelling. It signals to the other person that you need them more than they need you. And when someone is avoidant, that imbalance is the exact thing that makes them withdraw even further. They don't pull away because they don't care. They pull away because deep down they fear losing themselves in the relationship. And when they sense that someone is emotionally overinvesting, it triggers that fear. But when you shift from chasing to attracting, the entire dynamic changes. Attraction isn't about forcing someone to stay. It's about being someone they don't want to leave. And that starts with you. The moment you stop trying to get someone to see your worth and instead become someone who naturally commands attention and respect, everything shifts. The energy is different. Instead of operating from a place of lack, where you're seeking something outside of you to complete you, you start radiating confidence. You start embodying the kind of energy that makes people want to be around you, not because they feel pressured to, but because they feel drawn to you. Think about the people you're most attracted to in life. It's not the ones who are constantly proving themselves. It's not the ones who are desperate for validation. It's the ones who move through life with certainty, who don't need to beg for attention because they already know their value. That's what creates attraction. It's not about playing hard to get. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about genuinely stepping into a version of yourself that doesn't need to chase because you know that what's meant for you will stay. And this is where most people get it wrong. They hear stop chasing and they think it means playing games. They think it means ignoring texts on purpose or trying to make the other person jealous. That's not attraction, that's manipulation. And manipulation will never create a real lasting connection. Attraction happens when you focus on yourself so much, on your growth, your happiness, your purpose, that other people can't help but notice. They start to feel the shift. They start wondering why you're no longer seeking them out, why you seem unbothered, why you're thriving without them. And that's when something interesting happens. The very person who is pulling away starts leaning in, not because you force them, but because your energy is now magnetic. When you stop chasing, you become a mystery again. You give the other person space to wonder about you, to think about you, to miss you. Because if you're always there, always available, always initiating, they never get the chance to feel what life is like without you. And people don't appreciate what they never have to work for. So instead of chasing, turn inward. Pour your energy into yourself. Build the kind of life that excites you, that fulfills you, that makes you happy, even if that person never comes back. Because when you do that, you shift from being someone who needs them to someone who chooses them. And choice is powerful. When someone feels like you're with them because you want to be, not because you're afraid of losing them, it changes everything. That's when they start to see you differently. That's when they start reaching out. That's when they start feeling the need to keep your attention. because now it's not something they're guaranteed to have. This isn't about reverse psychology. It's not about trying to trick someone into missing you. It's about genuinely stepping into your own power and knowing that you don't have to chase anything that's truly meant for you. The moment you stop running after people and start focusing on becoming the kind of person who naturally draws people in, that's when everything shifts. And the best part, when they finally do come back, you won't feel the desperate need to hold on, because you'll already know that no matter what happens, you are enough. Most people panic when they feel someone pulling away. The silence feels unbearable, the distance feels personal, and every instinct tells you to do something. Send a message, check in, ask if something's wrong. But here's the truth. When you react to that space with fear, you push them even further away. And it's not because they don't care. It's because avoidant people process emotions differently. They don't respond to pressure, they respond to freedom. They don't feel closer when you chase, they feel safer when they have the room to come back on their own. But giving space isn't about playing a game. It's not about waiting a specific number of days to text back or pretending to be busy when you're not. That's manipulation, and people can feel that energy. Giving space in a way that actually works is about stepping back with confidence, not anxiety. It's about genuinely being okay with the distance instead of just tolerating it while secretly waiting for them to notice. Because if you're just sitting there counting the hours, wondering when they'll text, you haven't really given them space. You've just paused the chase. And they can feel that. The reason avoided men pull away isn't always about you. It's about their own internal wiring. They associate closeness with pressure, even when no pressure is being applied. They fear losing their independence in relationships, and the moment they sense emotional intensity, their first instinct is to create distance. That's not something you can fix by trying harder. In fact, trying harder is exactly what confirms their fear. But when you stop reacting, when you step back with ease instead of urgency, they start to feel something different. They don't feel trapped, they feel intrigued. They don't feel pressured, they feel curiosity. They start wondering why you're not pushing, why you're not over-explaining, why you're so calm. And in that space, something shifts. Because when you stop chasing, you break the pattern. Most people don't do that. Most people react. They send another message. They ask why he's being distant. They try to force a conversation that he isn't ready to have. But when you don't do that, you stand out. You show a level of emotional security that makes them rethink everything. They start questioning why you're not reacting the way they expected. And that's where the pull begins. But here's the key. You don't just give space and wait. You don't just sit there hoping he notices. You actually live. You fill that space with things that make you feel good, things that make you excited, things that remind you that your world doesn't revolve around whether or not he reaches out. And when you do that, you do something powerful. You shift the focus back onto yourself. You stop giving all your power away to someone else's actions. When you give space with confidence, you create an opportunity for him to miss you. Because here's the truth. People don't miss things that are always there. They don't think about what they never have to work for. And when you've been the one putting in all the effort, initiating all the conversations, always making sure things feel okay, they never get the chance to truly feel your absence. But when you step back, they do. And suddenly the energy changes. This isn't about being cold or punishing him with silence. It's about knowing you're worth enough to stop over-investing when it's not being matched. It's about giving him the room to feel what life is like without you, constantly bridging the gap. And when that happens, he starts to realize something. He actually wants to reach out, not because you begged, not because you pressured, but because the space allowed him to. And when he does, you don't rush to fill the silence with explanations or questions. You don't act like you were sitting around waiting. You respond with warmth, but also with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they were fine either way. And that is what makes all the difference. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships, especially when dealing with an avoidant person, is overcompensating. They sense distance and their immediate reaction is to do more. They send more messages, initiate more conversations, plan more time together, put in extra effort to make sure the other person feels loved. And on the surface, that seems like the right thing to do. It feels like you're just showing them you care, proving your commitment, making them feel secure. But the truth is, when you're the only one holding the weight of the relationship, you're not building connection, you're carrying it. And the more you carry, the less they have to. Avoidant men are wired to resist emotional pressure. The moment they sense that someone is overinvesting, they start to withdraw. It's not because they don't care, because deep down they fear losing themselves in the relationship. They fear expectations, obligations, and anything that makes them feel like they have to show up in a certain way. And when you start overcompensating, when you start doing all the emotional work for them, it confirms that fear. It reinforces the belief that relationships are draining, that they require too much effort, that the only way to feel free is to pull away. But when you match his level of investment, when you mirror what he's giving instead of trying to make up for what he's not, that's when the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, he's not the one feeling overwhelmed. Suddenly, he's the one realizing that if he wants to keep you engaged, he has to show up. And that's the key, because no one values what they don't have to work for. No one appreciates something that's just handed to them without any effort. If he never has to reach out first, if he never has to plan a date, if he never has to wonder how you're feeling because you're always there, always available, always checking in, then he never truly feels the weight of losing you. And that's the moment everything starts to shift, because the second he senses that you're not doing all the work, he starts to feel the imbalance. He starts to notice that you're not filling every silence. You're not the one always initiating. You're not waiting by the phone hoping he'll engage. And that absence, that's what makes him think. That's what makes him feel. That's what makes him start to realize that if he doesn't step up, he's at risk of losing something valuable. But the mistake most people make when they try to do this is that they match investment out of frustration, not confidence. They pull back, but not because they truly believe in their worth, because they want to teach the other person a lesson. And when you do that, it doesn't create attraction, it creates resentment. He can feel when you're pulling back out of anger. He can sense when you're waiting for him to fail so you can justify walking away. But when you do it from a place of calm certainty, when you genuinely know that you deserve mutual effort and you refuse to accept less, it doesn't push him away, it pulls him closer. This is about shifting your focus from proving your worth to owning it. When you stop trying to convince someone to choose you and instead move like someone who knows they deserve to be chosen, everything changes. Your energy changes. The way you carry yourself changes. And he feels it. He notices that you're no longer over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-giving. He senses that you're secure in yourself, that you're not operating from a place of fear, that you don't need his validation to feel whole. And that is what makes him step up. Not pressure, not ultimatums, but the realization that if he doesn't invest, someone else will. Because at the end of the day, you don't want someone who's just there in the relationship. You want someone who's engaged in it, someone who chooses to show up, someone who doesn't just respond when you reach out, but initiates because they want to. And when you match his level of investment, when you stop doing more than what he's giving, you give him the space to make that choice. You give him the opportunity to realize that effort is required. And if he values you, he will show up. Not because you begged, not because you convinced him, but because he wants to. Most people believe that in order to connect with someone, they have to constantly express how they feel. They think if they just explain their emotions enough, if they just share their thoughts clearly, the other person will finally understand and respond the way they want. But when you're dealing with an avoidant man, this approach does the exact opposite of what you're hoping for. The more you push for emotional conversations, the more he feels pressured. The more you try to force clarity, the more he retreats. And it's not because he doesn't care. It's because avoidant men don't process emotions the way you do. When someone has an avoidant attachment style, deep emotional conversations can feel overwhelming. They don't open up because they feel like they have to. They open up when they feel safe. And safety for them doesn't come from pressure. It comes from freedom. The moment they sense that someone is waiting for them to express something deep or looking for constant reassurance, their first instinct is to put up a wall, not because they don't feel anything, but because they don't know how to navigate emotions in the same way. The key isn't to chase emotional depth. It's to create an environment where it happens naturally. And that means sometimes silence is more powerful than words. Sometimes instead of demanding an answer, you lean back and let him come to you. Instead of trying to decode his feelings, you focus on your own energy. You show through your actions that you are emotionally secure, whether he opens up or not. And when you do that, something shifts. Because suddenly the pressure is gone. suddenly he starts to realize that you're not going to force conversations he's not ready for. You're not going to analyze every little moment. And that kind of emotional security is what makes him feel comfortable enough to open up on his own. But this is where most people get it wrong. They think giving space means shutting down, acting cold, or pretending they don't care. That's not what creates attraction. You're not withdrawing affection. You're simply showing that you don't need constant emotional validation to feel secure in yourself. You're showing that you are okay even when he's processing things in his own way, and that creates a completely different energy. Instead of feeling like he has to explain himself or justify his emotions, he starts to realize that with you, he can just be, and that's rare. That's what makes you stand out. Because here's the truth. Avoidant men don't lack emotions. They just struggle to express them in the way you might expect. They feel deeply, but their first instinct is to retreat into themselves when things get overwhelming. And when someone pushes them to talk before they're ready, it doesn't bring them closer, it makes them shut down even more. But when they sense that you're not pushing, that you're not trying to force something out of them, they start to feel safe. And in that safety, they start to open up. Not on your timeline, not when you expect it, but in their own way, at their own pace. And that's when you see something interesting happen. The moment they realize you're not chasing an emotional response, they start to offer it willingly. The moment they sense that you're not clinging to their every word, they start to share more freely. Not because they were pressured into it, but because the dynamic has shifted. They feel less like they're being examined and more like they're being understood. And in that space, true connection happens. The best thing you can do is trust that if someone values you, they will find their own way of showing it. It might not look the way you expect. It might not happen on the timeline you want. But the more secure you are in yourself, the more they will feel drawn to you. Because emotional security is magnetic. When you're not constantly questioning where you stand, when you're not trying to pull answers out of them, they start to feel something different around you. Peace. And that peace is what keeps them coming back. One of the most powerful things you can do in any relationship, especially with an avoidant man, is to show, not tell. Most people make the mistake of thinking that words are what create change. That if they just explain their needs clearly enough, if they just tell someone how they feel, the other person will finally understand and act differently. But that's not how real influence works. It's not what you say that makes the difference. It's what you do. Avoidant men are not wired to respond to verbal pressure. If you keep telling them what they should do, how they should show up, how they should treat you, they're going to resist. Not because they don't care, but because they feel controlled. They feel like they're being backed into a corner. And their instinct is to retreat. But when you shift your focus away from words and into actions, everything changes. Because here's the truth. People don't listen to what you say as much as they react to how you move. If you keep saying that you want to be valued, but then continue accepting the bare minimum, they hear one thing, but they see something completely different. And they always respond to what they see. If you tell someone, I won't, there's something powerful about being able to walk away, not as a threat, not as a manipulation, but as a deep understanding of your own worth. Most people stay stuck in situations where they're not valued because they're afraid that if they leave, no one better will come. Afraid that if they set a boundary, they'll lose the person completely. Afraid that if they stop trying, the other person will just let them go. But here's the truth. When you move from fear, you weaken your position. When you hold on too tightly, you suffocate the very thing you want to grow. Avoidant men feel this energy. They can sense when someone is afraid to lose them, and whether they realize it or not, that fear makes them pull back even more. Not because they don't care, but because they don't feel the need to change anything. They don't feel any urgency to show up differently. Because in their mind, you're not going anywhere. And as long as they believe that, their behavior stays the same. But when you carry yourself in a way that says, I'm here because I want to be, not because I need to be, everything shifts. Suddenly the dynamic changes. You're no longer operating from a place of scarcity. You're no longer anxiously waiting for them to choose you. You're standing in a position of strength. And that energy is undeniable. Because here's what most people don't understand. Being willing to walk away isn't about playing a game. It's about having standards. It's about knowing what you deserve and refusing to settle for anything less. It's about recognizing that you are the prize, that your time, your energy, your love, it's valuable. And if someone isn't meeting you where you are, if they're not stepping up, you don't beg, you don't plead. You don't try to convince them. You simply step back and let them feel your absence. And that absence, that's what makes them think. That's what makes them realize what they had. Because as long as you're always available, always waiting, always reaching out, they never truly feel what it's like to miss you. They never have to question whether or not they're losing something important. But when you shift, when you stop overgiving, when you stop making excuses for their behavior, when you quietly but powerfully remove yourself from a dynamic that isn't serving you, they feel it. And that's when they start to wake up. Because here's the truth. A man who values you will not let you walk away easily. If he cares, if he truly sees your worth, he will step up. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in the way you expect, but if losing you actually matters to him, he will feel the shift and he will respond. But if he doesn't, if he lets you go without a fight, then that's all the clarity you need. That's the answer you've been afraid to face. And that's the moment you realize that you never really lost anything, because you can't lose someone who wasn't truly yours to begin with. You can't lose a connection that wasn't built on mutual respect and effort. And that's the most freeing realization of all. Because when you finally understand that, you finally embody that truth, you stop chasing. You stop settling. You stop waiting for someone else to decide your worth. And that is when the right people, the ones who see you, who value you, who are willing to show up, find their way into your life. Because the person who is meant for you will not need to be convinced. The person who truly wants to be with you will not leave you questioning where you stand. And when you understand that, when you live by that truth, you stop fearing the loss of anyone who isn't willing to meet you at your level. You stop holding on to things that are only weighing you down. And in that space, in that newfound freedom, you create the opening for something real, something strong, something that doesn't require begging or chasing, something that is built on mutual respect, effort, and undeniable value.